Hey everyone, I'm Trent Kusters from League of Geeks. Welcome back to the Game Maker's Notebook. This is part 2 of my chat with Tarn and Zach Adams of Bay 12 Games. If you haven't checked out part 1, I'd suggest you go and do that now. Otherwise, enjoy.
I'm Tarn Adams, and I've been making Dwarf Fortress with my brother Zach for the past 20 years. Dwarf Fortress is a settlement management game. You'll have to make sure your dwarves have enough alcohol to drink and mushrooms to eat. But first, a new world and centuries of history will be generated for you to build upon. A story will arise as you play because your mind is a story-building engine, and Dwarf Fortress is designed to help you weave tales. Fortresses tend to collapse. Flooding, lava, beasts, starvation, madness. Dwarves aren't as resilient as you might think. But it's okay because losing is fun, and now we've got graphics.
This is our life's work, and we're never going to stop.
Hope you enjoy the game. Good luck.
Okay, so we've released it. All this crazy stuff is happening. We made $870. There's stuff coming in from all ways, from the internet. The possibilities of your game are now being like, you know, you're seeing them in the reflection of the community's plays and these incredible stories that they're coming together and writing. What was the kind of release schedule from there on? And I guess what was the next big moment for the game that you can think of, whether it be in regards to features or sort of like a step ahead? We've released a game in 2006. We've got the donation button up. What sort of comes next if you like zoom out and look at the life of Dwarf Fortress?
So I'm having I don't remember which came first, but I think one of the biggest things that happened was when the game had its X or its Y, Z coordinate. The Z coordinate. So like Dwarf Fortress is just one strip of a two-dimensional square that you're looking at. Mm-hmm. And then we gave it a Z coordinate so you can see a slice above what's going on, a slice below what's going on. And you can press a button to go up and down and see the different slices. Like in the Steam version, you can actually look down and see like all the way to the bottom of the mountain that you're on or whatever. Yeah, but in because it's ASCII, you can't do that.
Yeah, so you can only show one layer at a time.
Only one layer at a time. But you can do that with this release. And that one, that was
2008, 2009.
Yeah, that was a big deal.
Big deal. It took 9 months.
Right. I remember when we were making Dragslay, I remember we had a discussion about Dragslay allowing you to look it up and down, and we decided not to do it because of a kind of a mind puzzle or a puzzle how do you shoot an arrow down from the top of a wall? And then for some reason we got it into our mind that was impossible to show in just one slice at a time.
Yeah. Because you'd have to, in an ASCII game, like in a 3D game, you can lean over, right? Shoot straight down, but you know it's much harder to display in a text game. So we kind of but then we came back around to it because we were forced to put this back in because when you're doing just one slice like Dig Dug or whatever, but you've got moats, you've got bridges over moats. You could have a magma moat with a steel bridge over it, but then someone could pour water on top of the bridge, and then there's water sitting on it, and you have to come up with all these special cases, just all this special mechanical logic to make one layer work. Yeah. We were just like, what if the water was actually sitting in memory above in a different layer so that everything can make sense? And it just became so nice after that. However, the thing with one slice, see in the original version, you get a nice cliff face. You dig into it, you hit a river. Then you can go further, you hit a chasm that goes down into nothingness, and there's bat people flying around and stuff. Then you go further, you hit a magma kind of river. And then you go further and there's a bunch of demons and you die. So that's kind of the structure. There's a very kind of ordered structure
to these layers that you're talking about, or do you mean before the layers?
This is before the layers. Yeah. So this is just one layer that has these rivers.
So let's take a moment here to pause just for our listeners again who may have just seen a screenshot of Dwarf Fortress or something. The game is, are we looking at it bird's eye view? Like, yeah. And then so before the layers, you're looking at the game bird's eye view, you're top down, you're watching your dwarves move around in your fortress, and you're sort of digging from left to right or
left to right.
Yeah, left to right.
Right, okay. Right is deep. You see a bunch of little happy faces and a bunch of kind of periods and commas for grass. And then there's just a bunch of like hashtags that's just like, I am a wall. Yeah. And then you can dig into that, and then you see more like hashtag type things. I mean, I'm saying hashtag is probably actually like an alt 178, which is a block, but whatever. There's just so people know that's like a solid thing. You see this solid thing as you dig deeper. So as you uncover one square, that becomes like a period that's a floor, but then you're surrounded by these blockier looking things. And then you dig again, you get another period, and that's surrounded by blocks. And so you're looking down on this.
You can kind of tell that this is the stories that are spreading and not the visuals that are spreading around it.
yeah, exactly. I just love like this because I've done it before. Obviously, I'm sure so many people have been through this process of like showing someone, one of their friends, Dwarf Fortress. Like, I mean, just a screenshot as you're trying to explain it. And the moment they see the art, if they're not familiar with games and ASCII art, they're just like, what the fuck? Like, is that the game? But it's so beautiful how expressive it is, and the stories that come out of it. Okay, so you add the layers. So we're going left to right. That's going deeper. But now you've added this other layer system where you can see behind and in front of that.
Yeah, and the problem with that is that you lose this structure, because there was kind of a built-in story structure of hitting the river, hitting the chasm, hitting the magma, which was limiting in a sense, but also gave a very tight experience that we could play with and had for years. Like tightening up what that was like and the progression. Like, you could only make steel once you got to the magma, and there was a kind of a progression of materials then as well.
Right, like a crafting or tech tree. Ramping mechanics and things as you go.
Yeah, and you can totally see it in games like Terraria that just did it that way, right? It's basically Terraria tilted on its side at this point.
Great way to explain it.
Right, you have to go over this river, but then when the 3D thing happened, I think Tarn, as the mathematician, can tell you that it's impossible to find a river in a 3-dimensional cube because it's just a line.
It's just a line.
So if you're digging around and to left to right, to forward and back, you'll never find this line that's going through. But the original game, you automatically hit it.
If you're just digging right, you're always going to hit a line that blocks.
Of course,
that blocks you. And now, so we had to like, well, how are we going to replace the rivers and water underground? People were fishing and doing things with water. So we had to have these giant sprawling lakes, kind of like these undersea type things.
Right, that you could hit, like tap into.
You would always hit those. You would always hit those going down then. And the same thing happened with the magma and the dry caverns. And it just, but it loosened everything. Like, it just generally loosened everything up. And this is something that's been, gotten to be, a worse and worse problem for the last 14 years, since that's been in there, where like we have these really large layers that we need, but it makes it harder to put in like little experiences. Like, you found like a temple that was buried underground or something like that. Like, you can do that, but it has to play nice with all the elevation slices and all the cuts and things. Games like Minecraft and stuff have been attacking these problems and come up with solutions for them. And we're just kind of in a situation where our legacy code was just kind of older and harder to deal with. So that's a whole nother thing, is this big map rewrite we're still planning to do in a few years to kind of readdress that stuff. And it's just essentially another Z coordinate size rewrite. It just never ends.
And so that was the big one. And Zach, when were you saying, do you think that was the Z coordinate thing? What year?
It was 2009, I'd say 8, 9.
All right, yeah. So not too long afterwards. I mean, in the span of Dwarf Fortress's life.
Yeah, that's what you asked for, right? The first big thing.
Yeah. Okay. And how? So you talk about it being looser in regards to the problem space and the design decision space that you're working within here, that's obviously going to lead to this rewrite that you're talking about. But how was it for the players? Like, how did it change their experience, and how was it received amongst your community?
I think it was mixed for that reason, right? That some people wanted the old experience.
There was a big schism in the
because we had speedrunners. We had speedrunners before.
Wow.
But without the Z coordinate, there was no way to flood your fortress and kill everyone that way.
Which
is obviously we need. You got to have that. Yeah.
And the thing is, and one of these things that's fairly rare in games that we put in once we had the Z coordinate was like water that goes down a tube and then up the other side. We have water pressure. And like a lot of games like Noida, for instance, which has really amazing kind of fluid systems and so forth. It's just this arcade game that has like 100 different fluids or whatever. It doesn't, at least, last I looked, doesn't have like a pressure. It won't go up the other side because that's just more, CPU cycles. It's a harder, or kind of a harder problem. Especially with pixels. Like for us, we don't have pixels. We just have these larger tiles. So it's easier to do things like pressure.
Of course, yeah.
And that catches people off guard. It's great. You can see just people get flooded because they don't expect when they I'm just going to pour the water down below. It can't possibly do anything down there. And it's like shoots right back up, floods the entire fortress. Right.
That's one of the things that they say about Dwarf Fortress is that water is more dangerous than lava.
Oh wow, yeah, because of this system and people's unexpected reactions from it. Amazing. Okay, so we get into 2009, or almost at 2010, but I mean we're still a decade away from where we are here. So what's like? Let's just keep moving through these steps of development. What came after that? Was there any particular influx of players from something? Did the game? What's sort of increasing this game's notoriety? Were there any landmark moments other than just some of these stories being shared? I mean, I remember my first experience with the game, experience with the game in the sense of hearing about it and like learning of the legend of Dwarf Fortress was this incredibly beautiful long image that someone had drawn, like an illustration about a dragon that they had awoken or something like that, and it stepped through it in this incredible illustration, and I was like, what is this game? And then I had that experience of like looking at it being like, oh shit, it's an ASCII game. Okay. What, like beyond this, after the Z depth, what was one of the next big moments for you as well?
Well, I think, I would say the world activation.
Yeah, well, before that, so we'll get to that. That's 2014, and that's definitely huge. But the funny thing about this, between 2009 and 2014, before the game is, because that was a big thing that made the simulation awesome. Before any of that happened, we get the Museum of Modern Art in 2011. Like this early.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay, tell me about that. Like the call, did they come through your mum as well? Like, is she your PR agent at this point in time? How did you hear about it? How does MoMA get in touch with someone?
We have sleeper cells all over the country of these tech workers,
the IT
people that love Dwarf Fortress.
Yes, of course.
And so the MoMA.
Yeah. One of the people that worked at the MoMA, and this
an
IT
person from the MoMA.
Was an advocate for us, and then and this kind of was lined up with exactly the time when the New York Times Magazine published an article, because there's this whole other parallel story to this of like when we getting picked up by mainstream press and gaming sites and stuff. And this was when in like 2010 or 2011, we got picked up by the New York Times Magazine when Jonah Weiner came and stayed in town for like 5 days or something. It was 4 or 5 days or something, or maybe 3, 4, or 5. It's hard to remember. It's happened so many times now. But like they just wanted to write about the game, and
just came in situ, like lived with you for a bit and watched you guys work. And
just did interviews and we hung out or whatever. I remember we went to the city, that kind of thing, because we were always living near Seattle and stuff. But we did go to the city actually, and so that put us on also New York radar. It's now we're over on the East Coast, and this is kind of like that also influenced the decision, because I guess they just got together in a coffee shop like Jonah Weiner and Paul Antonelli, the curator of design at the museum, and Paul Galloway, who handles all their computer stuff and also now does that kind of thing as well. And somebody else, it might have been the person who organizes 256 in Brooklyn, who does a bunch of, this is like kind of these people in that scene.
Yeah.
Right?
And now they're talking about Dwarf Fortress.
Yeah, they're talking about Dwarf Fortress. And the thing they had to decide, this was before any, I mean, there were games in museums and these limited sets, but MoMA
That's what I was thinking. This is not just early for Dwarf Fortress. This is early for games in general.
There were no games at Museum of Modern Art. They picked 14. The 14 games that went into Museum of Modern Art all came out at the same time. I mean, all were announced at the same time in 2011. Mm-hmm. And there was The Sims, SimCity, Eve Online.
Oh, that's right. And then the guys from Eve, they actually invited us to Iceland, and I'd never been out of the country before, and it was all because of this MoMA thing.
Yeah, we were like MoMA buddies.
Did you go and visit Reykjavik?
Yeah, we went to Reykjavik, and in like 2011 or 2012, and we were just hey, we're MoMA buddies, and they were also doing something like their big anniversary like fest at that time. Great. And that was just a great time going out there and meeting people and stuff, and including like one of their big concept artists was like. Also did Dwarf Fortress like fan art for their
amazing.
Like the beasts in the game, and had been doing it, for like years previous. And we met them. That was just
so cool.
It was just all lumps together.
Those games are both of those games as well. It's like you might not think of them at first to put them on the same sort of shelf or on that same track, but like Eve tracks. In regards to its stories and its possibilities and its community-driven aspect, it tracks so similarly to Dwarf Fortress on those metrics. It's amazing.
Yeah,
I love the phrase as well. I love the phrase Tarn, MoMA buddies. It's like
yeah, we met like we haven't met like the people that made like the Sim City and stuff, but I remember like Cannibal was one of the game, like Adam Saltzman and stuff. We met up with. He was actually also a MoMA buddy invited to this Eve thing. That's where we met. So it was like awesome. All the MoMA buddies were there. Yeah, I don't remember. Was that it? Were all 3 MoMA buddies, or was there 4? I don't remember. I don't remember all the MoMA buddies. I just remember being interrogated at this panel with all the MoMA buddies. This Icelandic professor, who like he went by a single name. His name was Goder or something, right?
like Prince or Beyonce or something.
Yeah, and he's just this big Santa-looking dude comes up to me and is just like, "What does this game tell you about the medieval mind?" And I'm like,
"This is giant audience."
A giant audience. I blanked so hard. Just absolute worst.
I think academic panels are one of my favorites. You go up there to talk about your game and you can get a little heady about it, but sometimes they just shoot so intellectual that you're just like, that gap there is massive.
Yeah. It's like I seen Name of the Rose. I mean, I can tell you about like if Christian Slater is a monk or something, I can tell you about that.
Yeah, give me a launching on it.
I got nothing.
So the game gets accepted into MoMA. Like now it's an understatement to say that like the mainstream has picked it up. Like you're culturally in like one of the cultural and like cultural centers of the world in New York. You've been enshrined in culture in the mainstream culture and that sort of noted as a cultural seminal piece in the medium, and you're still in the meantime you're still working on this game. There's still features to come and everything.
Zach's not even full time yet. We didn't have enough money to like Zach was still working, and it was
that's great.
And here we are in the MoMA.
You got to get time off work for your Reykjavik trip. Yeah,
exactly. That's literally
Okay, and so then you were mentioning, Zach, there was something else that I think, Tarn, you said MoMA came first. What was it that the other big moment?
Yeah, much like the Z coordinate, this
the world activation.
The world activation. And the thing with that was that we haven't even talked about
what does that mean again for our listeners? What's world activation in the realm of Dwarf Fortress?
Right. So there's Fortress mode, Adventure mode, but there's a mode we haven't even talked about yet, which is Legends mode. And it's the entire history of the world for hundreds of years that the game is sitting there generating before you even started Dwarf Fortress. Yeah. And there's like thousands and thousands of events, like this dragon destroyed this village, or this dwarf slew this important goblin, and all their lineage, like this begat him.
Yep.
And it's like, but it all stopped as soon as your fortress started, and the year 0 or whatever. Mm-hmm. And the world activation was all this stuff just continues on outside your fortress,
and you're existing in it as like you say, all of the stuff that you're not seeing is just still continuing on outside of your fortress. Yeah.
But at this point, it actually can help it actually can visit your fortress, because all of your dwarves are from these. Well, maybe not the original 7, but the rest that come are from these world is from the outside world, and so is the adventure. And adventure mode is also in the outside world.
Oh, like they're a character from this lineage. It's not just something that's spawned at the start of the game or something, or spawned
you have a
when,
choice. And it's so there's like these interrelationships between the modes that we're also developing at this time, where you can like retire your adventurer. But now that the world is active, your retired adventurer can come and live in a fort that you play later. So they'll actually come there and be a citizen, but then you can retire your fort. And so all your dwarves are still alive. You don't even need to die anymore, right? Which is, some people opt to keep them alive without going out. But then you can play adventure mode and come and like talk to your retired adventurer that was a citizen of a fort you retired. And you can ask them about the things in their life. They can tell you about the monsters that you killed back when you were playing.
Wow.
And it's just all gets so tied up that way that we were just exploring these kind of relationships around this time as well.
So this is going to be, it's such a funny question to ask, because I actually don't even know how you're going to answer it, Tarn. But maybe you've been asked before. We're saying all these things, right? Like, you can go into this fort and talk to your adventurer, and they tell you about, the things that you slayed when you were them. But really, and we know that the game is ASCII. So I'm sure people, again, who haven't played the game or are just kind of loosely familiar with it, they've got an idea. They're able to run the simulation of what we're talking about in their head. But how are you actually, again, I guess in layman's terms for folks here, but the procedural generation that goes into this, like what's involved in like writing up this text? Like when you say your explorer tells you about this thing, I imagine, Tarn, obviously you're not sitting there writing out all this text yourself. How is this presented to the player? How are you actually activating and presenting all of this information that this game has? Like, Zach, you've spoken about so much of it isn't presented as well. It's invisible. But Tarn, like, let's just drill into that example you said of like going to your adventure and talking to them. What's involved in that? How's that presented to the player? How is that generated?
Yeah, so if you're some additional people listening will understand roguelike games at least, and that you have a little @ moving around, and that's what it is in adventure mode. We did that as an homage there. You have the @ that you are that moves around, and then there are all the other characters on this grid on a screen, and you can walk up to one, and one of them will be your old adventurer. So in this fortress, so you walk up to them, and then I think you have to press like K and move the cursor over them.
This is what we had to change for the Steam version.
Yeah, this will all be mouse driven up. But you can press enter. It pops up a giant menu because there's so many things to talk about. And you can ask them something along the lines of like, tell me about your past or something like that. And you select that. And then what this does now is you have this character that's a creature that has a we actually have this structure called the soul that lives inside the creatures. And we actually made it into an array in case we do possessions later, so that multiple souls. So that's future proofing for you. We haven't used it yet, but it's been there for decades. We haven't used it. It's ready to go. And so it actually will query the active soul, whatever soul is currently controlling this body, and then go into their personality, into their memories, look through the events. It stores a bunch of ID numbers to store the events that they have seen. Now, the events are from like way back in world generation. We need these. It's just a simple structure that says what happened. It's just a type with some ID numbers, and just says in the year whatever this killed this, for instance. It's very lightweight, right? Incredibly lightweight. And there's just a million of them sitting around. But in this adventurer's head, it's everything that you do. And we don't have to worry about this like taking too much memory or anything, because the player can only do so much in their lifetime.
Of course.
And so there's just a few events sitting up there, a few important events. And so when you ask them about their past, they can query the list of events in their head. They can even sort them by importance, however that's rated. And then what you do, then you've pulled an event, and but that is just a little structure with these ID numbers or whatever. And now we need to turn that into text.
Yes.
So we have, hundreds of, or maybe something like 100 something types of events, and every single one has just like a string creator. And the string creator takes a context so that it can It can shorten names that are like the person talking will just refer to themselves as I or whatever.
Yeah, okay.
This is another problem with localization.
Yes, there is no localization.
Very difficult for Dwarf Fortress.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. If you plan it in advance, I mean, we had a chance, but that chance. Well, now with money, the chance returns, right? I mean, it's possible to think about it anyway. To think about it, but so you can kind of rebuild these sentences, and then you can display the sentence on the screen, and I'm not going to be voice acted anytime soon. It's unless we have we can do text to speech, and it would just
maybe that's
text to speech dragon. Yeah. Well, actually, it's much better than what I'm used to, isn't it now?
Yeah,
totally. We could just use anybody's voice and get sued.
So so now let's talk about the world activation again. Had you been teasing this with the community? I mean, like talking about your interaction with the community now, or what year was it world activation first of all?
2014.
2014. Okay. So now we're 12 years into development. When we talk about community now around Bay 12 and Dwarf Fortress, you've got the donate button up. What are we talking about in regards to the size of the community like active folks? Because obviously there's chatter going on around the internet, but people that are there for every release talking to you on your forums. We've gone from 50 to 200. Where are we sort of at now?
Yeah, we're at a few thousand active accounts, like maybe 3,000 or 4,000 as the years march on a little bit that have logged in at least once a week.
Yeah, right. Okay, gotcha.
And so there's always a churn of like 300 active people, something like that.
My next question is like, how active are you with that community in regards to, are you two just kind of like in the zone, coding away, creating this thing and like, oh, there might be something coming and then you drop it on them? Or are you actually talking to them and very open about your development as it's going along?
I absolutely have to engage with the community because we're begging for money.
Yeah, we're also making sure that that everyone's happy and that there's no abuse going on. And so we're moderating. We both are full-time moderating it. And
so now it's gone from just having like a few people tagging along saying, hey, can I maybe throw you some birthday money, to you're actively moderating and managing this community, engaging with it. And Tarn, you just said you're begging for money. So let's talk about that situation, because I know it plays a part in like Dwarf Fortresses and Bay 12 story, and eventually, I'm getting together with Tanya and Kitfox and the Steam thing, right? So what's your sort of living situation at the moment? And, it sounds like you're now actively talking to the community about donating as opposed to just, hey, we have a button. Where are you at in that regards?
Yeah, in 2014, it would be just in the midst of it. So I quit my job in 2007. 2006, but they let me stay on till 2007. That was very nice of Texas A&M University. Thank you very much for the extra year. And then I moved back up to Washington, where Zach was at, in an apartment I lived in for maybe 13 years after that. And until just recently, until like 2020 or something. Mm-hmm. And because I did a pandemic move, I remember that in 2020. Yeah. So 13 years, years in the apartment up there. And just that's the situation. I'm living in Silverdale, Washington, and which is west of Seattle. And that was basically unchanging.
and how much sort of, because I know you've been quite transparent about how much you're making every month on the game, right? Like you were actually publishing your donations as well to the community. Am I right in saying that? How many was that from like day one when you started getting donations, or did that come a little bit later?
I think it was day one. If it wasn't, it was a few months later. I mean, we just decided that a way, because the number was 800, and 800 is pretty good, and you want it to be a little bit bigger. Yeah. So you say you're like, okay, so we'll just let people know exactly what's coming in. This is going to be like fluctuating, and we want the downward fluctuations to be something that people can see.
Yes.
We did a bunch of other stuff too to drum up the donations. Like we were giving out like crayon drawings for the longest time.
Crayon drawings, like
drawings of
if people donated.
Anybody, and there's no amount associated to it because we didn't want to deal with sales tax stuff or anything. So anybody, they could even ask for them. I mean, that rarely happened, but you could get. Zach drew 1,500 of these maybe, And he also the one that was even more popular was we would so way back. So this was a strange thing that happened. Like the first time I got my PayPal donation, it sends you an email to your inbox that says like you have gotten it's not a donation, but it just says you've received money, right? Mm-hmm. And then you just have that sitting there and it gives you the person's email, right? And so the first time it was that birthday person, so I probably just wrote back and said, hey, thanks, it got over here, the button works. Yeah. But then when you release the game and suddenly you've got 50 or 60 of these sitting in your inbox in just my Gmail or whatever. And I was like, well, I need to reply to every single one of these and say, thank you. But then I got bored out of my mind just because doing that. And I didn't want to copy paste a form letter, although I eventually ended up doing something genuine. Like that. Yeah. And I didn't want to set up an auto reply. So what I started doing, just weirdest thing, is just I put a few ASCII characters, and then I just said like the dwarf is being attacked by a crocodile, and just like these silly little messages. And then we formalized that very quickly into a thing called an ASCII art reward, which was, and then we eventually called them story rewards as well, which was Zach, who's a better writer than I am, would write an actual like paragraph story that is also illustrated up at the top with a few ASCII characters. And Zach made more than 3,000 of those, I think.
Amazing. So I would hope that forget about the game in MoMA. Are the crayon drawings in MoMA as well, Zach?
No, surprisingly, it's kind of hard to find them anymore.
Yeah, right.
They did make it into the magazine article, though. The New York Times magazine article.
Yes. Oh, they did, right. In 500 years, it'll be like an original Zach Adams crayon drawing was found in an attic somewhere in Delaware.
Well, they're probably worth, they'll be worth more when we're dead, but they're probably worth more now.
The classic artist issue.
I'm never going to do another one, so they're probably worth more.
There's a limited number, exactly.
Yeah, they're all signed too. Yeah.
So, how much around this time? How much are you making in donations a month? And Zach, is this? Are we getting close to the point where you're now on it full time as well in 2014?
This was, I think you went full time in 2013. Is that strikes me as like the correct?
I remember. Well, I met my wife in 2013, so I think I remember I was having trouble telling her what we were doing.
I was just thinking that. I mean, like, even if, for example, my business partner Blake is just like loves his war games, like miniatures and things like that. But doesn't look like your typical guy that's interested in, like, if we're going to stereotype, in like painting miniatures and things like that. So when he met the woman who would become his wife, there was definitely a moment where he had to tell her about how much he was into miniatures. So I imagine trying to explain to your new partner about Dwarf Fortress is a whole other level than that.
Yeah. Actually, she Googled me. She knew. She Googled me. Yeah.
We are in the age of Google at that point, true.
But yeah, like I said, she only played The Sims. She rarely played video games. So which is good. You just have different interests or whatnot. But I had trouble telling her about how we because we were like I was half living off donations and not donations, contributions.
Yeah, contributions, yes.
Half living off contributions and half living off working at the Circle K.
Yeah.
So
okay. Yeah.
I went back and looked in 2014 at so for 5 months here. This is what it looks like. May 2014, we made $3,700. June, $4,900. July, $15,000. August, $6,000. September, $4,500. So
was July just or that $15,000? Was that like a summer? People just sitting indoors in the air conditioning with summer, or was it a big release?
No, 2014 is probably the World Activation release. Actually,
oh right, of course.
And so there's just like boom, just big spike, and then back down to So maybe we were making $40,000 a year split between the two of us.
Yeah. So it's still like you're on the game, but it's still like meager living. And I think Zach, you were saying too that you're like splitting it between your other job and what's coming in from contributions as well.
Yeah. So I don't remember when I quit anymore.
Yeah, 2013 was my guess. Like right at that time where we're like it's $20,000 for each of us, but Zach doesn't want to work at the Circle K anymore. Right? Let's just
come to think of it, I think it was before. It was right before I met my wife. So because we met in November, so I think it was that year before then sometime.
All right, let's move things forward then. You're both now working on the game. You've had world activation. It's like this Legends mode is like, now spilling into the rest of the game. It's going on as people are playing. We're getting closer. What's the next big step?
Yeah, so an interesting thing we should probably mention around this point in 2014 is we had that Eve Fest, right? Where we in 2011, where we
the MoMA Buddies Reykjavik trip.
We met the MoMA Buddies, but we didn't know any other game developers. We didn't know anybody. No one at all. We don't go to events. Didn't go to. Never been to PAX. Nothing.
We actually thought that game developers stole ideas from each other and were just cutthroat and
you were like, stay away.
Yeah. We only heard bad because you only hear the bad stories, right? And they do exist. And so, but it was around this time, 2013, 2014, that we met Kepa Y from Rocket Cat Games,
yes, Kepa.
Canada. Yeah, so that was cool because he lived like 10 miles away from us.
Oh, right, great.
Yeah, and then through Kepa, we went to PAX, and we had a PAX panel on procedural generation, and on that panel, I think there was like Ryan Clark and maybe Zach Aikman was there, and Tanya was moderating. So
this is when you met Tanya.
This is when we met Tanya as well, right at this time, and also met at the indie booth or the mega booth. That's what they call it, the indie mega booth, where there's like 50 or 60, stalls at PAX. Everybody knew who we were, and we had no idea. We had no idea about this, no idea at all.
Wow.
And they were just like, wow, it's Tarn and Zach make Dwarf Fortress, and that was just complete shock, absolute 100%.
Yeah, that must be absolutely surreal. Because now, just to give folks, I think probably the majority of folks here who are listening, much like they know what Dwarf Fortress is, they'll know what the mega booth is. But for those who don't, the indie mega booth was something that existed for a number of years. Maybe like I want to say almost like 8 years or more. But basically at PAX, a bunch of folks would come together and they would buy a huge amount of space, and then they would actually just sell that off to indies so that indies could get some premium space at PAX, and they could come together and pool their resources. And the folks at the top who were like running it at the time, Callie Wallach, Chris Floyd, some others, they would make sure that there were deals with sponsors. So, Alienware would supply the computers and everything. But it was curated as well. So you would submit to be a part of the Meggy booth, the indie mega booth. And it was hugely beneficial it was kind of like a rite of passage to indies who are looking to commercialize at the time or get their games in front of more eyeballs. I mean, our first mega booth was PAX West in 2013 or something like that. And I think you two as well, it would have been around the similar time that you jumped into the mega booth. But the interesting thing is that there's like a lot of independent game developers who you're meeting for the first time, but folks that at the time were quite notoriable, like online, like for example, the Vlambeer crew or whoever it may be, the Super Meat Boy crew, stuff like that. And so I can imagine to walk onto into this huge area of the show and there'd be 100 independent game developers and they all know who you are. Must have been an incredibly surreal experience.
Yeah, especially because we'd heard of a lot of those games too, right? Like you're saying. And that was just a whole kind of paradigm shift for our heads there. Like these are, we could
now you've got this community
with these people. Yeah.
It's kind of funny because we went to PAX, but it's like when you talk about like commercializing Dwarf Fortress, we were mainly there to like help out with other people's booths.
We volunteered. We were volunteering at the Death Road booth. We volunteered for 4 days, topped ourselves. Just we couldn't even speak.
That's actually a great question. Did you show the game even, or were you exhibiting your game, or just hanging out?
We never showed Dwarf Fortress until the Steam stuff, until the Steam stuff, and we never submitted to like IGF or anything like that. We were still like, this was up until this moment we had considered ourselves completely separate from indie games.
Like you do get into PAX free when you do that though.
Yes, exactly. You get the exhibitor pass, which also lets you stay on the floor for the parties after you set up and stuff.
That was great. It was a great experience, and we tried to we went to PAX a number of times after that as like speakers and stuff.
Yeah, especially it's right in your backyard as well. It's such a great, and it is and it still is to this day. It's not even like there was like a golden days where that was happening. It was a real hub for community. Even, I was just at PAX recently, and it's just filled with developers who are like helping each other out. And, that community, you make such fast friends when you're there, sort of in the trenches of that show together. Do you remember what games you volunteered on the booths for?
Oh, we were there for Death Road with Keppa, and we literally were sitting there hawking the game and kept like amping up the number of there was like 2,000 different interactions with the items because we completely forgot or whatever, and just but we sold it. The game did all right.
Awesome.
We were there doing our part.
Hell yeah. Okay, so where are we at now? So you mentioned this is the first time that you've sort of now become part of a community around this same time that the World Activation stuff has come out through meeting Keppa, and just for our listeners too, the Tanya that Tarn mentioned before is Tanya X Short of Kitfox Games, so one of the co-founders there, and she is Kitfox is the studio that helped you get onto Steam. So which we're still a fair way away from, but when did you first start talking to Tanya, or did she approach you or anything about Steam? And you said something interesting before, Tarn, which is like you wouldn't have done Steam if it wasn't for a couple of particular reasons, like health insurance, for example. So how does that conversation even come about? And at what year did that conversation start happening after meeting Tanya?
Well, for one thing, that people had been telling us to join Steam for years and years and years. And
it is these people though that we had not met before, right? So it's really just starting at this time, because I started going to GDC in like 2016 maybe. There's that thing we did in Korea as part of this too. I mean, we met a bunch of people there, and I remember at GDC, like Charlie Cleveland was really asking me to get it on Steam, and just sat me. He took me aside and just put me in a corner in a room and was just like, you really got to put this game on Steam. That's the they make Subnautica
Unknown Worlds,
and Unknown Worlds. That's right. And I was like, I was just absolutely not having it, right? Yeah. But it definitely planted like this path forward if we were going to get into money trouble, like that a lot of people said, like, you're going to be able to make it on Steam if you just give the game a facelift. It's going to do well.
Yeah. So we couldn't do that by ourselves either.
Yeah, of course, right? So tell me, when you say you were like just so against it at that point in time, I'm interested to hear in why, because I'll do a little parallel with us, right? Like we're making a game at the moment. We're making two games, right? One's Jump Light Odyssey, it's that space colony sim, and then the other one is Solim Infernum, which is
we played the original. I was going to talk to you about that. Yeah, because congratulations, that's awesome.
Yeah,
I got that on my wish list already.
Yes, gotcha. You better too as well, Tom. Because I got Dwarf Fortress in my library, so it's there.
I'm going to buy it.
Well, so Solim Infernum, for the listeners, is just for the context of the podcast, is it's a reimagining of a game that came out in 2009. And there are so many similarities to your story with Vic Davis, the original creator. He's based in Athens, Ohio, and came at games not through the community or anything like that. Like he was making Civil War virtual tours on like DVD-ROMs or CD-ROMs essentially, and with Macromedia Director, was like, I'm going to make a strategy game, made Armageddon Empires, and then ended up making Solim Infernum basically with a software program designed to create DVD menus. And everyone was telling him the same thing, like, you've got to get this game onto Steam. But for Vic, in talking to him through his business earlier, like the Civil War, virtual tours that they're selling the CDs and stuff like that, Amazon had become like a bit of had become this middleman and had like cut out the whole book industry and everything. So Vic viewed, Steam as a potential middleman, right? And we've had chats with him. We recorded a similar podcast thing where it's interesting, like looking at as Steam is building up its potential to make money for folks, and it's growing in market share. I think a lot of folks viewed it as that way, as like, is Steam the big middleman come here to take a cut? Like, can we do it independently? But there are also tech concerns as well for Vic in regards to just getting the game onto Steam. Like you said with the ASCII thing, like he just couldn't get it onto Steam on his own. What were the concerns for you with Steam? Was it just like a reticence to even open up that can of worms, or was it a similar concern in regards to someone coming along and taking a share of your cash? Or
well, to tell you the truth, at least for me anyway, it was like for the longest time I thought Steam, like right before, I thought Steam was just kind of a monopoly that shouldn't exist.
Yeah, that's exactly what Vic thought.
Yeah,
like,
it's
I don't want to speak for him, but a similar
yeah.
sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a complicated relationship with Steam because they're around here, right? We actually it was one of
we've been to twice.
Yeah, we've been there a couple times, and actually when we say we hadn't met developers, like when was that Steam tour? That was early on. That was before we met anybody. Like
had they reached out to you?
Yeah, just reached out to us to go tour the place, cool. And it was interesting. We go check out what Steam's like, or Valve or whatever. So we're like over there and we see them, as people running this company and stuff, and not as like this faceless thing or whatever. And that kind of softened that up a bit. Also, we just got softened up on the idea of having a Steam library ourselves, because I hadn't gone on Steam until way later.
This is just DRM. What the hell do we need this for?
Yeah, of course.
But the thing is, the people are there, and there's this whole. There's so many parallel stories here, right? That we haven't gotten to. Like another parallel story way up here is all of the Dwarf-likes, the Dwarf-like games, Memoria, Prison Architect, RimWorld, all that stuff. They're on Steam with, millions of players.
Yeah.
And so near the end, when we're considering, going on Steam, a huge consideration is that the people are there.
Yes.
The game is going to be successful.
It's a proven market already for your game. Like there are games that literally were probably inspired by Dwarf Fortress on there, making all of this money with the millions of players. It's proven already.
Yeah, it was just a no-brainer. That by the time we got to that point, like 2018 is when we signed the contract.
Yeah.
It was a no-brainer. You just had to. It was going to be Steam, and we put itch in there as kind of a we still believe, hopefully that some market, some storefront's gonna, be out there fighting the good fight.
Yeah. So now I absolutely love Tanya. She's a super impressive woman. So I'm not surprised that everyone else is telling you to get onto Steam, and she's the one that manages to convince you. But tell me how that came about. Like, were you convinced and you went to Tanya, or did she come to you, or how did the relationship with Bay 12 and Kitfox come about?
So after we met at that panel, we kept talking, and in fact, we wrote 2 books together in between.
Oh, right, the Procedural Generation.
Generation books. Yeah. So we were editors.
You wrote those together.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We were both we're co-editors, and I would just kind of go through and do the tech stuff, and Tanya knew everybody. And it was not a stark division like that. Like she did a bunch of review on the articles as well, and I also reached out to some people. But that was kind of the vibe of the editing relationship.
But I remember the conversation we had. We were at our favorite restaurant in Seattle, and Tanya mentioned the fact that she would do this for us, and I think Tarn. I had finally was like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. I have to convince Tarn of this
by this time.
Yeah.
And we were brought around because the health stuff was right here. Right.
This is okay. Yeah. So there are health concerns going on in the background where your donations and your lack of health insurance is not going to assist. Yeah.
And so many things together too, because at this time also, sometime back in I think it was 2015, we also got the Patreon. And that changed the dynamic of our crowdfunding a great deal, because we had some subscription-based crowdfunding on PayPal, but not a lot. And we were still getting the majority at that point from just one-time contributions. But then Patreon is a subscription-based model, and that when we signed up for that, we immediately shot up and doubled our income or something, because so many people were waiting for an easy orange button to press. Yeah. Not the big sign-up sheet that PayPal had and stuff.
Yeah, okay.
And
so then also it's consistent, I imagine, too. You're not waiting on people to come back and repeat donate when there's a release or new players.
And we went down and visited their offices in San Francisco when it was very small. I mean, it's funny because we went and visited the offices again in 2018. It was for for an interview we were actually doing with No Clip, that the cat video that Danny did. And Danny was actually Danny was here last week actually, or no, not last week, yesterday. Danny was here yesterday. Danny is leaving today. They just he just spent 3 days recording here. Awesome. And the Patreon, though, that's a complicated relationship, because when we went to visit with Danny to record, just in the place we happened to be recording their offices, it had grown to such a gigantic business by that point that we weren't even known to them. We were no longer, like, we got the VIP treatment originally because we were one of the biggest things up there back in 2015, and then now we're nobody. And which is fine, but the problem is that they've made a series of kind of questionable decisions, as it relates to like teasing, NFT stuff and all that kind of thing. Just a million decisions about trying to get rid of their $1 donors and just all this stuff that would cause these problems. And I don't remember which one it was, but it was during one of these times also this dinner with Tanya. So we had
So you're there's that frustration going on in the background.
Yeah, there's that, and you're like, this is like Jared Kushner's brother is the VC on that thing and stuff. And you're like, and that's
becoming a bit of a minefield, right?
And that stuff, it's like, this was like, Trump is president now, Kushner's in there.
What year?
All this stuff all together. This is like 2017 and 2018, somewhere in there. So we're just in the midst of all this crap, and we're like, Patreon is like literally going to vanish overnight sometime or something, is what we were thinking at the time. But of course, they're still here. But it was one of these things where we were just like, okay, we need to parachute. We need to get out of here. This health bill, I wouldn't, if I had the health bill he had, like his wife's insurance covered it, like I'd be screwed. I'd just be gone. And so, we're like, okay, this is what it took to finally prepare us to consider Steam.
To dock into the mothership, the Valve mothership. Okay. All right. And so that's 2017. The game released, correct me if I'm wrong, is last year, right?
Yeah, December.
December last year, right? So we've got now in true Bay 12 Games fashion, it's like 5 years from one point to the next. Tell me a little bit about that working relationship in the early days. How do you even go about, God bless Tanya for even taking on the project, like how do you go about, and there's two things that I'm really interested in here is like, how do you structure a business deal where you're helping someone like, folks like yourselves in a situation? We've done a similar thing. We early on, the Goose Game crew, House, right? Like we co-developed their first game and they were just kicking off as like the first game they ever made or something, or the second I think that Nico had made. And they were like, help, PlayStation want our game and we're in this thing, what do we do? And so, we helped them get funding and everything. It was a bit of a co-development thing. And then they went off and obviously did amazing things. And so Tanya, working with yourselves in a similar situation, first of all, what I'm interested in is how do you structure a business deal like that where someone comes along, what's it now, almost 15 years into the process and is going to take you onto Steam? Because you've known Tanya for a long time. You've had a working relationship. Sounds like a perfect coupling there. But how does that unfold? How does that come up?
Yeah, no, you've got to set up the contract in case, for the bad days, right? So it's so we just drew up this contract in roughly November 2018 and just decided, okay, so what we don't want to do at Bay 12 Games here, the two of us, is hire anybody or think about anything, learn any kind of employment law or handle any extra tax burdens or anything. We don't understand that stuff. We could learn it and kind of, our leverage coming in is we've got this gigantic game that is going to do very well on Steam.
Of course.
And if it gets a facelift, and also that, if the deal is driven too hard, we will do this stuff ourselves. We'll figure it out. And so, but it was all amicable, of course. This talk.
Of course. It's almost like the perfect coupling because Tanya has all of that experience that you're talking about as well. So she has leverage in that regard too.
And she has also another thing we were looking for is kind of not just the ability to get like our contractors or whatever we're going to get.
Of the money, right?
Yeah.
Like, we can't pay these people.
Yeah, we can't pay for it. Right. We can't pay for anything.
Yeah, so there's an upfront investment that's happening as well. Yeah,
absolutely. And then also Tanya had Victoria Tran at the time, who just community management, like community director, communications director, that we would be able to reach out to press people, reach out to more people that we can talk to.
I think they did moderation stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they did that was also really smart. Was the people that worked on the game they reached out to the community, the Dwarf Fortress community,
very clever,
and hired the artists and people out from our fans, so they understood what was going on, and they were really self-motivated too because of that.
Yeah, there's no onboarding for some of these people. They knew certain things about the game better than we did because they've been modding for 10 years or whatever.
That's like, I think I remember there's hearing some urban legend about George R.R. Martin has a guy that he calls if he ever forgets what's going on in the world of his books. He's like, where's this character at this point in time? And some dude in like Scandinavia somewhere is like tells him.
Yeah, we've got the wiki. We refer.
Yeah, we don't know. There's many times that I've forgotten how to play my own game. Yeah.
I just a funny anecdote like that. Recently, we had to do we're announcing these games, or I had to do an Armello Steam update or announcement. I'm like, oh God, it's been ages since I've done a Steam announcement because we've got folks who do that now. And I went to do it and I'm like, I've got to bring up the documentation. I went to the documentation and the example images and like the best case use is Armello. It's like our game. And I'm like, that's embarrassing. Okay, so you've got the contract in place. You've got this beautifully amicable relationship. It seems like a perfect pairing. You've got folks from the community. But now talk to me about, like, technically, how do you even begin this? And you're obviously developing Dwarf Fortress alongside this. So now you've got one version that's being brought up on one side and they're trying to catch up to you and like however many years of development and bring it along forward whilst you're continuing to, in your wild ways, continue to develop Dwarf Fortress. How do you even embark on a technical and logistical project like that?
And keeping in mind that we also signed a 3-year contract.
Right. I love it. Even that's like a long time already.
It's a long time, and we didn't make it by 2 years. We missed it, but more than 4 years. It took us 4 and a month. So so we had. And the problem also is that we have the existing community, and they have to come along for the ride. We hadn't announced this to them at all.
Yeah.
And that announcement came a few months later. And the agreement with the community was that there's always going to be a free version, which is, that's a big thing. I mean, that's not usual when this type of thing happens.
Yeah.
But we're going to have a free version that's completely compatible and feature, like you can move saves between them. The features are in line.
I didn't know about that.
Not just on release. Not just on release, but up into the future too. We're always going to be releasing them simultaneously when we can. We screwed that up right in the beginning, but now they're simultaneous. And it was just, our release date was just, we had to release the game.
As it is.
So we had that whole thing to deal with, which was super stressful. I remember not sleeping like for 2 weeks before we made that announcement. But of course, they were just like, yeah, cool. You explain things well. You just have to explain things well. We explained why we were doing it because we hadn't done it up to this point for the reasons we were talking about. And so when you want to communicate with people, you just do it, just say exactly what happened and why. And you just explain it clearly one time and you're just not going to have to really take questions.
Yeah. And also they're not just there for your game. They've been along for the ride. There's, when you explain the impact that it's going to have on you and your lives, and then the ability for Dwarf Fortress to continue on into the future too. I can't imagine how you would not be behind that as a community member.
Yeah, they do get you still worry though.
No doubt. I know.
But technically, then we're like, okay, we made this announcement, everyone's cool, and we have a few problems. One problem is that we are dead in the middle of the villains release work that was going to take, a year and a half or something. Mm-hmm. And we want to get it up, finish it instead of having all these promises dangling. And so it's funny, we signed this 3-year contract And then for another year, we work on just the villains in the ASCII release and get that out. So we're then in 2019 or whatever, and haven't touched the Steam version yet. Now,
that's what I was going to ask, because like I know as like a a company director or someone working on a game, it's so we're always talking about focus at our studio, and like how we're spending our time. I can't even imagine how you two went about continuing to develop Dwarf Fortress whilst having another team trying to like run alongside you. Even just the back and forth of telling people like, oh, that thing does this, or here's that thing that you need, or that communication, even if they're doing the bulk of the work. So you sort of went heads down on the villains release and then came back to that at some point.
Yeah, and this gave Tanya some time to spin things up too, because it wasn't going to spin up instantly. And so she was looking for all the right people. It didn't take too long to find them, but also like this amazing soundtrack we have, getting that kind of sorted out. We were listening to like some audio files and stuff of some initial music while still working on the villains release. So there's a bit of work going on, but we were not like. Because I didn't use version control until 3 months ago, so I couldn't really spin up a version easily that would have the graphics in it. So I wasn't working with artists or anything to like letting them see what was going on in the game and stuff. So it was not until like 2020, the beginning of 2020, where we get the villains release up. We also wind down the CRAN and ASCII rewards at this point.
Yeah, okay.
Literally spending, days a month.
Yeah.
Tons of time. And then, but because it's us, we're like, last call. And yeah, so we had 500 more to do. Just like
incredible. Yeah, I just like Zach, you just had a 1,000-yard stare.
It took a long time. It took a long time to get it done.
So once you did get it spin up, how many folks on like over at Kitfox were working on this thing with you?
So originally had the two artists.
Mm-hmm.
We had Mike Mayday and Meph, who did the masterwork, like big mod scene. Both of them like big mod scene people.
Yep.
And they did such good work. Like I was talking about the self starters and stuff like that. They helped us with the ramps, like the 3-dimensional ramps.
Oh right! Wow.
When the way they all fit together, like there's so many
combinations and stuff.
There's like
permutations of those.
Yeah. So like if a corner looks different than just a ramp going from east to west, and then like if a ramp's next to another ramp, it gets even more complicated. And I don't remember how many. There's like several sprites.
If you do every combination, it's some kind of like 3 to the 8th type thing you don't want to think about. But then they were able to narrow it down.
So they're solving problems for you.
They're solving problems. Yeah, no, they're really doing
it.
And also with dwarves are built out of little pieces, kind of like our original Armok game, the one before the 3D one.
Yep.
And so we kind of went with the same thing. And so from my end, it was so weird, this experience. From my end as like the programmer here, I'm like, I've been doing these side projects my whole life with like pixel graphics and stuff, and suddenly all of these skills coming up again, and it's just like, okay, this is easy. I can just glue these things together, no problem. And it's like the same. It was like the main thing that helped me make the dwarves was that space game where you're blowing pixels off of the thing. It's the exact same thing. And then but then Mike also like drew the pieces and glued them together and stuff. Yeah. And so that was the first group of artists there. And then we were also at the music, which was a whole other thing. We originally had Dabu on there, who's our kind of musician and sound designer person. And there was a whole kind of kerfuffle there because there's a mod called Sound Sense, and there's like literally 2 albums of music made for Sound Sense for free by someone named Simon Swerwer. Yeah. And so from the beginning, the community is like, you got to get Simon on the project. You got to get Simon on the project. And little do they know, we're like negotiating with Simon to get on the project. We can't say anything for like a year, for like a whole year or something. Yeah. And so we're like, yes, yes.
We'll look into that.
Yeah, great. We know, great idea. But how do you like this new Dabu track? And it's cool because Dabu stuff was cool. So it was like well received. It was well received. They're like, it's good, but there's this other 2 albums out here that you guys really got to look at. Yeah. And then we were able to announce,
and then of course, like the first there's problems with the art.
Yeah.
The first set of artists. So we now have 3 artists working on the 3 new artists.
3 new artists.
Yeah.
And 2 of them experienced dwarf people again, and one just someone who likes to draw animals, and we're like, okay, well, we can all use one of those.
Yeah, let's do it. We got animals. Yeah.
No, they're still working. Like right now, they're drawing all the baby animals. Why not draw 300 baby animals?
So it didn't make sense before, but now that it's so successful, I think people like animals. So.
Yeah. Right. If one thing is true, that's tracked in games for sure. Animal cell units. Something that we've discovered in, first of all, in just on 2 of our games, actually, right? So our Mellow was a paper prototype, first of all, but we knew that we wanted it to be digital. So we reached a point where we're like, okay, we need to take this now to digital, but we designed it to be digital first. We just prototyped it on paper. But one of the interesting challenges throughout development was that actual translation and communicating those things. And now we're running into that again in Solium Infernum, where something as simple as in Solium Infernum, you'll remember you submit your turns and it's a simultaneous turn system. So once everyone submitted their turns, the turn then transpires and you log back on, and it's just because it's play by email, or it was the original, and so you send your emails and the game master crunches them and sends back your save turns. You load up the game and the pieces are around the board and you're just seeing the results of what's happened. But in the new one, we're actually showing all of that happening, so you can see your legions marching across the board and the battles as they happen and all that sort of stuff. And just that one decision to actually visualize combat brings up all this raft of issues like sequencing and everything that Vic just completely could avoid, like a certain percentage of them, because it was just like you say, like you don't see it. Were there major challenges that came about by actually trying to communicate things more aesthetically? Like one that immediately comes to mind is even just changing the design space of the game. Like I imagine you have a goat and a goblin assets now, as opposed to them being the same thing, which changes even just a small area of how you experience the game. Was that something that you discovered going through this process of like this facelift, so to speak, of the game?
Yeah.
You're like, absolutely.
Yeah. The facelift though was more the UI and all that stuff. We had drastically changed, like even the way the dwarves work. The way they pick their own jobs without you deciding which ones they should work on. Like there's just like that, the way that works, the way all the input works, it's all completely new and different.
Yeah. I think a point here that's important that we've glossed over is the text, the fact that the game displays in text, the original, and that doesn't work for some people. That's not actually the main problem. The main problem is the UI is trash.
Yeah, we got you got WASD on one side, and then you got UKLM on the other side, and it's completely interchangeable in all the different menus. It doesn't matter.
Right. Okay. And so there's no UX consistency over the years or anything. It's just
you had to set the labors that the dwarves would do. Like, does this dwarf fish? Do they mine or something? You had to press 3 buttons, VPL, to get inside of the menu, and then you're editing essentially a spreadsheet one column at a time. But there's no mouse support, so you have to go down with the plus key and then press enter on the different.
Sometimes it's not the plus key. Sometimes it's greater than, less than.
Yes. No consistency whatsoever. And there are a bunch of mods, like the whole modding community that developed around the game is kind of centralized around this utility called DF Hack. And we have like a working relationship with them now at this point. But and there was a utility called Dwarf Therapist, which essentially exposes the spreadsheet to the player. And I don't know which
for it.
I don't know which direction this goes, but that's essentially what RimWorld's interface looks like. When you look at your
which is fine when you only have a few, but when you have 200,
when you have 200, that's a 40,000, elements of the spreadsheet or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
And so we had to come up with a different method. And we were kind of, partially inspired by mods here of these labor automation mods, but also we came up with our whole own system of job auctions and work details and stuff that sort of replaces the old VPL system.
It took us 3 years for four in a month. But 3 years when we were just working on the UI to get all this stuff right. I mean, it took a while.
Wow. huge undertaking.
And there's like nothing of the fun stuff.
It's been hard. It's been hard. That part's hard.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we had to learn how to be project managers. Never manage like Kitfox will hire the people, deal with any kind of issues there, but they're not creatively directing the people. That's just not part of what
so
they
you
do.
are, so you interesting. Okay, right.
Yeah, so art lead, music lead, all the lead type things, but they're bringing so many skills to the table that and we're not like a lead because we don't actually have the skill, but we do have to make the decisions, about where things are going to go.
You're major stakeholders, you're being consulted, all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Which is just time. And it is a skill set in and of itself, which, I mean, only to each other have you had to do for 25 years or something.
Yeah. So we just had to learn this, not overnight because it took 3 years, but we got better at it and just made sure that people were always unblocked while we're sitting here working on UI stuff mainly. But if they need, or if they're like, hey, I've got a new palette here, we're going to try the dwarf clothes and stuff, then I immediately have to switch gears, make sure that goes in, make sure they get a build out so they can keep working. And
so you two were actually working actively on the Steam version as well, alongside the ASCII free version too.
This is all on the Discord. I mean, we took some shortcuts so that we didn't have to really work on the free version, the new free version, at all. Maybe just a couple weeks, because the interface that you see on the premium graphical version, you'll notice that the text is all still fixed with font, and you have all the borders of the menus and all the buttons. Like a button at the bottom of the screen, like the pick to when you're going to go mine, it's a 4x3 grid actually that lines up with the ASCII grid, and those are ASCII characters.
So you can press a button and it will just completely be replaced by ASCII.
Amazing.
So you can just do it in real time, switch between the free and the non-free
really
graphics.
Clever. So in a way, you're not actually maintaining two games. You've got one version that has just different skins and interface methods. Yeah.
There's only some drawbacks, like the dwarves skip going from one cell to another instead of seamlessly moving.
Okay. Yep.
And so that's just some things that would be too much.
Like sliding menus and stuff. Like you can't make them pixel slide. They'd have to like chunk slide. And I mean, it's fine. It's workable.
I think people have gotten used to it.
There are still occasional complaints about all of these things, but
it's amazing what you get used to. I remember when I was a kid, like I said, we only played on consoles, and we had this old CRT, in me and my brother's room, and it would do this thing where it would just like vertically jump, like bounce, just constantly, like it was some sort of tracking issue or something. And kids would come over, as our parents would be having a dinner party or something, and we'd boot up GoldenEye or something, Shadowgate on the NES or something, and this screen would start bouncing, and they'd be like, "Whoa, what's wrong with your TV?" And my brother and I would just be like, "Don't worry, you'll be used to it in like 30 seconds." And sure, we gamed for years on this TV that like tracked and like would jump an inch back and forth for the entire time you're playing. Okay, so absolutely incredible achievement, this Steam release. And I think obviously the shockwaves were felt across the industry when it was announced. And then also, I mean, we spoke about you tracking your month's revenue and, sharing that with your team. I saw the game obviously hit top sellers on Steam. And then I think the next thing I saw about your success was on Twitter. Someone shared an image of your monthly earnings, and it was like the month before was like 30,000, and then December was like $7 million or something like that. And the graph just went like it didn't even like keep it in Twitter's preview. It just went off the screen. So what now? Like, what does it mean for you now that you are on Steam? I mean, it's great to hear that you've just got this one version that you're driving forward, but you've got this huge new influx of community, this relationship. Have you been set up with Kitfox in a way where you sort of can now, like, for example, we did with House Houses, like we got their game out, Push Me Pull You at the time, and then they sort of undocked from us and went off and, made Goose Game. Obviously incredible success, very proud of us, helping them in whatever small way we did to be able to achieve that. But are you now in a in a period or in a state where Bay 12 can now move on and make this, or is this an ongoing collaboration with Kitfox that you will have, for as long as you can sort of see ahead, or as long as the game is successful to a particular degree?
Yeah, we have no interest in managing.
Managing
this stuff.
Yeah,
no.
exactly.
Because we need the artists. We're still working with the same 3 people. They have things to do. We brought on a programmer, and for the first time, this is Putnam from our community, one of our kind of modders for over a decade, probably. We actually met them at one of the meetups that we had many years ago. And as of January, we have a programmer on the project that has the source code of Dwarf Fortress, the first person ever to have it, aside from me. And
what a moment for them as well, modding it for 10 years and then finally getting jacked into the matrix. Huge.
Yeah, because
the first wasn't like one of the first things they did was they wanted to like continue to do favors for DF Hack rather than even work.
Just
like, I've got what you need.
The modding. We're happy, for them to go through and just let their modding instincts take over, because they've sped up the game, by 30% or whatever in one case, and just these little things. Because I'm not a trained programmer, and I'm also not a modern programmer. Like all this stuff about modern CPU architecture, where you have to worry about like prediction, like the CPU tries to see in the future and stuff like that.
Relegate things to different cores.
And you just have to structure your code a certain way, just stuff that I didn't even know about. And that relationship is great. And we're also not handling their paychecks or their hiring or anything about them. We don't know anything about that, except that we obviously able to pay Tanya back their initial investment in terms of the structuring, because you're interested in the contract, and this is all public information. They get 20%. That's the deal.
Awesome. Yeah, it's great.
And the deal was to continue working together for I think it says 5 years or something like that.
And then reassess and see what's up.
And reassess, yeah.
That's fantastic. It's really great, and just like huge shout out to Tanya as well. What an incredible undertaking as well, and helping you both just reach this milestone, and in short, helping you both change your lives as well. Take the game this far, and then to be able to just kick it into a whole new era is really amazing. There are 2 more questions that I have for you today. The first one is, you've spoken about the Steam release being 0.5 or the version number or something, right? And you've got this list. What are some of the big things, like Zach, Tarn, that you have on your minds that you're happy to talk about? Like when you think about this idea of a fully realized simulated fantasy world, what's coming down the road, whether it be in 10 years or 2 years or something? What's still on the table like for you?
Yeah, so we're just going to clean up for a little bit still here.
Yeah, that's it.
So people
clean while you cook, right?
We're going to make sure we don't make a big mess here. But then we're just jumping. The first thing we're going to do is finish the villains release that we kind of postponed it.
Adventure mode.
Adventure mode. Yeah, adventure mode's not even done. Like we didn't even release the whole game yet. Yeah, so adventure mode first, but that's also kind of
the villains release and adventure mode are kind of the same thing. It's like
the same thing.
It's like what we did. What we did for Dwarf. Where we did for Dwarf mode with the automatic, reworking the job system and that kind of stuff, and the UI, we're going to do the same thing with adventure mode. We're going to make adventure mode really work, and like as it is now, even in the free version, it's kind of like really free form and not, you have the ability to do whatever you want, but there's no real game to it, or
it's not structured in a sense.
There's no meaning to it.
Yeah,
and so we're gonna work on that, make adventure mode really really good when it gets released.
And then we'll finally get to the Myth Magic release that I talked about at GDC 2016.
Right.
It's still on the list, everyone. We haven't forgotten. Yeah, exactly. All right, now because this is the thing that Dwarf Fortress is most known for, I would love to hear from both of you. Over all of the years, what is your favorite story that you have heard about your own game? Like whether it be the craziest or just, feels like it's your game most fully realized in someone's experience, or the funniest? What is what's the anecdote or the story of some player's little fortress that is really stuck with you over the years?
Well, for me, it was Arch Crystals. I don't know about you. It's like the min-max, the ultimate min-max. I've completely destroyed this game and completely won it. They made an entire tower of glass that goes down into hell and has a zoo of demons that are all captured. It's like, this game is mine now. I've beat this game.
Incredible. It's like the architect of the Matrix, like sitting in their room above their glass tower.
Yeah, and they pumped the lava up from the bottom, and for no reason, just pumped the lava all the way up 200 levels into a giant green glass tank above like the trees. Just sitting there, this glowing thing, while there's also like demons in cages down in hell in the Hell Zoo or whatever. And these are the demons like the Balrog that are supposed to kill you or whatever. Like, no, you're going to the zoo. And also that game ran for like 400 in-game years. It's like longer than the history of the world. They were playing this game.
Holy shit. Does this person work for the NSA now or something? Or
they do whatever they want. Do whatever they want. And
that's it. They're a god now, basically.
Yeah. And it kind of points back to what the thing that shocked me when I was doing it. So I mean, I do have a soft spot in my heart for the cat tavern bug. So just go look up cat taverns on YouTube and you'll find this like Dwarf Fortress cat bug or something like that. But the other thing that, I mean, this is just more as a programmer and stuff, because I had no idea when we started this that people were putting computers in games, right? That you could build a computer inside a game. Maybe it's seen something like a little animation or something.
Like a circuit board, like a virtual circuit board.
And so now people were using like 100,000 mechanisms to make like these water or like vampire powered computers that would have like the entire game of Space Invaders that was playable with levers and had a score list. And a display made out of drawbridges that would flip up and down and stuff. And it was just like...
That's it. Yeah.
That's excellent.
That's all.
People building computers in your games. Yeah. Okay. We've done it. Well, hey, congrats as well on winning the DICE Award for what was the best strategy game?
Yeah. That's so cool. Yeah, we were at the Elden Ring table too, so we got to see them popping up and down.
Elden Ring, yes.
Elden Ring. Yeah, amazing. Yeah. Well, 23 years in isn't bad. But hey, I'm looking forward to seeing you both at GDC. Thank you so much for hanging out. I know this is the longest episode I've ever done. It's a big chunk of your day. I know Danny was just in town pointing a camera in your face. So thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your story with everyone here, and congratulations on all your success with the Steam version. I'm really excited for the next 25 years of Dwarf Fortress.
All right, there we go.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a great day, guys.